The sun hung low over Long Beach, California, drenching the skyline in molten gold. From the penthouse suite of the Ocean View Tower, Nathaniel Cross surveyed his domain. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, the sprawling port of Long Beach stretched out before him like a massive living organism, its cranes and cargo containers moving with the rhythmic precision of a machine he had long ago mastered. It was his empire, and he ruled it with ruthless efficiency. At 45, Nathaniel was the embodiment of controlled power. His silver-streaked dark hair was perfectly groomed, his custom-tailored Brioni suit whispering of wealth and status. Every inch of him spoke of a man who had fought tooth and nail to reach the pinnacle and had no intention of ever stepping down. His long fingers tapped a steady rhythm on the polished mahogany of his massive desk. Behind him, his assistant's voice crackled through the intercom. "Mr. Cross, your 4 o'clock is here." Nathaniel's lips curved into a thin smile. "Send him in, Ava." The heavy glass door opened, admitting a nervous-looking man in his 30s. Jason Lee clutched a slim leather portfolio like a life raft. Nathaniel didn't bother standing. He simply gestured toward the chair opposite him with an indifferent flick of his wrist. "Mr. Lee," Nathaniel began smoothly. His voice was low and controlled, silk layered over steel. "Tell me you have good news." Jason cleared his throat, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Sir, we've run into some complications with the zoning board. They're pushing back on the environmental." "Complications," Nathaniel interrupted, his tone hardening. "I don't pay you for complications, Mr. Lee. I pay you for solutions." Jason swallowed hard. "If we could just have more time." "Time?" Nathaniel rose slowly, his 6'2" frame casting a long shadow over the desk. "Time is money, Mr. Lee. And while I have more money than I could ever spend, my patience is considerably less abundant." Jason's face drained of color. "You have my word, Mr. Cross. 48 hours. We'll fix it. See that you do," Nathaniel said coldly. "Or I'll find someone who can." Jason fled, and as the door closed behind him, Nathaniel allowed himself a rare flicker of satisfaction. This was where he thrived, in the crucible of high-stakes business where power and pressure ruled, and men were broken or forged. The intercom buzzed again. "Mr. Cross, your wife is on line 1. Nathaniel's expression softened slightly. "Put her through, Ava." "Darling," came Celeste's warm, velvety voice through the speaker. "Don't forget the charity gala tonight. 7 o'clock sharp. The car is picking us up." "Of course," Nathaniel replied, his tone warming as much as it ever did. "Wouldn't miss it for the world." "Oh, and Nathaniel, were the cufflinks I gave you for our anniversary. They'll look perfect with my new Valentino." He chuckled. "As you wish." As he ended the call, Nathaniel's gaze drifted to the collection of framed photographs on his desk. Celeste featured prominently in most. Celeste at Cannes in a silver gown, Celeste on their yacht off Amalfi, Celeste radiant on their wedding day. But tucked behind them was an older photo. Nathaniel hesitated before pulling it forward. It was a picture of him as a younger man, his arm draped over a woman with kind brown eyes and a soft smile. Eleanor, his first wife, the woman he had walked away from in his relentless pursuit of power. For a moment, something flickered in his expression, regret, perhaps, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. He slipped the photo back into its hiding place. Eleanor was the past. Celeste was his present, and he had everything he had ever wanted. As if to reinforce the point, his phone vibrated with a text. "Cross International stock up 4% today. Projections show continued rise." Nathaniel smiled. This was his world. Numbers, deals, dominance. Sentiment had no place here. But across the city, in a modest apartment with peeling paint and thin walls, Eleanor Maddox stared at an envelope on her kitchen table. Her hands trembled as she opened it for what felt like the 100th time. "Dear M.S. Maddox, we regret to inform you of the passing of Mr. Samuel Everhart. As per his last will and testament, your presence is required at the reading of the will." Samuel Everhart? She barely remembered the name. They had never met, at least not that she could recall. And yet tomorrow, she was expected at a law office, surrounded by strangers who had lived lives of wealth and power. She stood and moved to the window. Long Beach glittered in the distance, but from her side of town, it was a far cry from the ocean views Nathaniel enjoyed. The memory of their life together surfaced, before he'd changed, before the coldness had settled in. She shook her head. The past was over. She had survived him once. She could do it again. What Eleanor didn't know was that Nathaniel Cross had received the same summons. The gala and the summons. That evening, at the Pacific Aquarium transformed into a glittering venue, Nathaniel moved through the crowd with practiced ease. Celeste, gleaming in emerald silk, was the perfect partner, always knowing when to stay close and when to let him work a room alone. Nathaniel, she murmured without moving her lips. The Harringtons are here. Go charm them. He nodded, already in motion, when his phone buzzed in his pocket. He checked the message. Mr. Cross, you are requested at the reading of Samuel Everhart's will. Tomorrow, 2 p.m. sharp. Woodward Price v. Associates. Nathaniel's brows knit together. Everhart had been a silent partner in his earliest ventures. They hadn't spoken in years, but the man had been worth billions. And now, he quickly confirmed his attendance and slipped his phone back into his pocket, excitement simmering beneath his cool exterior. When he and Celeste finally left the gala, she kicked off her heels in the limo, smiling slyly. I saw you talking with Senator Wallace. Interesting. Very, Nathaniel replied. But not as interesting as tomorrow. He told her about the summons. Her eyes widened. Everhart was a recluse. No family. Darling, if he's left his estate to you, it will be billions, Nathaniel said, allowing himself a rare moment of optimism. Enough to take Cross International global. To rule it all. They toasted, Nathaniel thinking he had already won. But fate had other plans. The will reading. The next day, 2 very different alarms rang out across Long Beach. Nathaniel awoke to the gentle chime of his smartphone in his Belmont Shore mansion. He stretched lazily, confident, while Celeste murmured, "Ready to claim your fortune?" Across town, Eleanor jolted awake to the screeching buzz of her thrift store clock. Her stomach twisted with anxiety. Nathaniel's day began with a power breakfast, his advisors buzzing about expansion plans. Eleanor's morning was quieter, a simple cup of coffee as she stood before her closet, wondering what to wear to a meeting that made no sense. At precisely 2 p.m., they both arrived at Woodward Price v. Associates. Nathaniel stepped out of his Bentley, straightening his tie, the picture of authority. Eleanor arrived moments later in an older sedan, her knuckles white as she clutched her purse. The receptionist led them to the same conference room. When Nathaniel saw her, his mask slipped. Eleanor. She met his gaze evenly. Nathaniel. James Woodward entered moments later, his expression unreadable. "Thank you for coming," he said smoothly. "Shall we begin?" Revelation and shock. Woodward spoke carefully. Samuel Everhart passed 2 weeks ago. But before he died, he made significant changes to his will. Nathaniel leaned forward. "What kind of changes?" Woodward turned to Eleanor. "MS. Maddox. Did your mother ever mention Samuel Everhart?" Eleanor blinked. "No. She died when I was young." Woodward nodded and opened an envelope. "Perhaps this will explain." He read aloud Everhart's letter. "To those present, if you're hearing this, I am gone. I live a life of secrets. My greatest regret is abandoning my daughter before she was born. Eleanor Maddox is my daughter. I leave her everything. To Nathaniel Cross, you were like a son to me once. But I watched you become someone I no longer recognized. Perhaps losing what you expected will lead you to find who you once were." The room fell silent. Woodward concluded, "Eleanor Maddox now inherits Mr. Everhart's entire estate, including his controlling interest in Cross International." Nathaniel's face drained of color. "This is absurd." "It's all been verified," Woodward replied. "DNA tests confirmed the relationship." Eleanor sat stunned. Nathaniel glared at her. "You have no idea what you're doing." She looked back at him. "Maybe not. but I've survived worse. The aftermath. Over the next days and weeks, Long Beach's elite whispered about the stunning change of fortune. Eleanor, now the majority shareholder, began to step into her role, meeting with Woodward and reviewing Everhart's empire. Nathaniel fought to maintain control, charming investors, making promises he wasn't sure he could keep. Behind the scenes, old secrets surfaced. Eleanor discovered that Everhart had gathered evidence of Nathaniel's questionable dealings. She debated what to do, destroy him or work with him. Nathaniel read Everhart's final letter, imploring him to be better, to find meaning beyond money. The battle begins. At Cross International's board meeting, Eleanor made her entrance. No longer the timid ex-wife, but a woman transformed. She laid out her vision for ethical leadership and expansion, and, to Nathaniel's horror, the board began to listen. When they met privately afterward, Eleanor smiled coldly. "You taught me to fight, Nathaniel. Now let's see who wins." Nathaniel's smirk returned. Game on. And somewhere in Long Beach, in an unassuming cafe, Eleanor met with Everhart's former assistant, who handed her something that might tilt the scales forever. The storm to come. As Long Beach glittered beneath the stars, two former lovers turned rivals prepared for a battle neither of them could predict. But one thing was certain. The game had changed, and neither Nathaniel Cross nor Eleanor Maddox would ever be the same.